A woman went out of the airport. She hailed a taxi and gave the directions to the driver. As soon as they drove off, the woman started to talk. Her blabbering annoyed the driver. He turned to her and said, "I can't hear what you're saying. I'm almost deaf." The woman was shocked and didn't open her mouth for the rest of the ride. Only after she got out of the taxi did she realize the man had lied to her. How did the woman understand it? If the driver had hearing problems, he wouldn't have been able to follow her directions. Detective James was invited to Long Hill College, where more and more students had their things stolen. The detective was asked to investigate these cases. In a week's time, the man had 3 suspects. "What were you doing when the last theft happened?" he asked them. Thomas said, "That day I was away. I had to take my younger sister to her rehearsals." Amanda replied, "I spent that day in the library, getting ready for my presentation." And Ryan said, "This summer, I'm going to Denmark with my parents. That's why I spend all my free time learning Dutch." Detective James immediately understood who was lying. Can you figure it out? It was Ryan. They speak Danish in Denmark. Dutch is the language of the Netherlands. Jason works in the same company as Amy, a bright and lovely girl. The guy has had a crush on Amy since they first met. To attract the girl's attention, Jason agrees to take part in the Brain Challenge game organized by their company. The first task is to crack a rebus puzzle. Jason is given a piece of paper. That's what he sees there. It doesn't take the guy long to figure out the answer. What is it? It's broken promises. Jason is one of the few who gave the correct answer. He moves to the next level. He finds himself in a room full of random stuff. There, he needs to find an object that would be the answer to the following question. What goes up when the rain goes down? Look around and help Jason find the needed object. The guy chose a red and white umbrella, and that was the right answer. His next challenge was to get out of a basement. There are no windows there. Jason sees just one door with a letter combination lock. The only thing that can probably give him some hint is a note he finds in the farthest corner. P plus 3, N minus 1, B minus 1, N plus 4, S plus 1. What's the code word? Jason needed more time to crack this riddle, but he managed to get out of the basement. The code word was SMART. The key to this riddle was hidden in the alphabet. P plus 3 following letters is S. N minus 1 letter is M, and so on. Jason is amazed to find out he's one of the 2 contestants to make it to the finals. Now, he has to do his best to win. The guy comes up to the table with 3 cups on it, but only one of these drinks is safe to try. The other 2 are poisoned. And even though a mistake won't cost Jason his life, the consequences will be unpleasant. The drinks are tea with sugar, cappuccino, and hot chocolate. Which one should Jason choose? If it was indeed sugar in the tea, it would have melted completely. But it didn't happen. Cappuccino looks suspiciously green. It's probably unsafe to drink. Jason opted for the hot chocolate and won the challenge. Now, Amy will definitely notice him. 3 people are hiding in bathroom stalls. Try to figure out who's a pregnant woman. It's the one wearing the untied sneakers. It's often difficult for pregnant women to bend over to lace up their footwear. 2 people were born at the same moment, but they don't celebrate their birthdays on the same day. How is it possible? They were born in different time zones. In one of these zones, it was already the next day. Detective Brown was having dinner in his kitchen. Suddenly, he heard screams coming from his neighbor's house. He rushed there. The door was open. When he ran inside, he saw a paramedic bending over a lying man. Once the doctor saw the detective, he exclaimed, "He fell down the stairs. Luckily, he's just unconscious. I need to take him to the hospital." Detective Brown didn't need to think twice. He called the ambulance and arrested the man on the spot. Why? When the detective was running towards the neighbor's house, he didn't see any car outside. Then how did the paramedic get there? And how did he know his help was needed? You don't have them when you're born, but you get them later. In several years, you don't have them anymore. But then they come again, but in a different form. Many years later, they might leave you again. What are they? They are your teeth. A criminal appeared in a small town, and 2 young women went missing. Right now, the 3rd girl is being taken away. When she comes to her senses, she finds herself in a well with 2 other girls. The well isn't particularly deep, so they decide to try to get out of it. The shortest and slimmest of them climbs on top of the other 2, but she can't reach the edge of the well. What can the girls do to get out of there? The tallest of the girls should climb on top. She has the longer arms and will easily reach the edge of the well. You get lost in the woods in the middle of the winter. Suddenly, you see a cabin. It's dark and cold inside. There is just 1 candle on the table and a wood-burning stove in the corner. You pull out your matchbox and see there's only 1 match left. What should you light first? The match, of course. It was winter when an elderly couple finished building a pretty new house. The husband was responsible for the construction, while his wife was a self-appointed decorator. The house looked beautiful. Very proud, they invited their teenage grandchildren to have a look at their work. But within an hour, 1 guy and 2 girls managed to break several windows. They also knocked down the fence, removed the decorations, and ruined the roof. But the most bizarre thing, the retired couple didn't seem to mind. They just smiled looking at the teenagers. Can you figure out what was going on? The grandparents made a gingerbread house and invited their grandchildren to eat it. 5 costs $25 and 25 $50. If you buy 2 $55, you'll pay $75. What is it that you buy and how much does one item cost? You're buying door numbers, and one of them costs $25. On a rainy Monday morning, a car hit a woman at the crosswalk and sped away without stopping. Luckily, the woman wasn't badly hurt. She even managed to describe the vehicle before being taken to a hospital. It was a green van. The accident happened in a small town. That's why the police figured out easily that there were just 3 cars like that. They found and questioned all the car owners. Gary said, "My sister took part in a concert in another town. I gave her a lift and waited for the show to finish to drive her back." Angela explained to the police she'd been busy with some household chores, gardening, washing her van, and the like. Larry answered he was ill. That's why he spent the whole day in bed drinking hot tea. The police officers understood who was lying right away. Who was it? It was a rainy day. Washing a car and gardening when it's raining? Not the best idea. Angela must be lying. A man was in an 8-story building when a fire started. He jumped out the window but didn't even bruise himself. How is it possible? The man jumped out of the first floor window. 2 people are standing near the river. Both of them want to get to the opposite side, but the boat can carry only one of them. It's summer, and the river isn't frozen. And still, they manage to get to the other bank. How? They are on opposite sides of the river. One town had a weird law. All the men leaving there had to be clean-shaven, but no man was allowed to shave himself. The only person in the town who was licensed to shave them was a 40-year-old barber. But then, who shaved the barber? There was no need. The barber was a woman. A mother promised her son to pay him $60 per hour if he washed his hands for 6 seconds before eating a meal. The son did that, and his mom gave him his well-earned money. But the boy got upset. Why? Because he received just 10 cents.
Two teen sisters, Maya and Ariana, were supposed to study in the library, but one of them went to a party instead. When they came back home, their parents could immediately tell who hadn't been to the library. Can you? It was Maya. Look, there's glitter in her hair. Mr. Harris is a landlord. In his building, it's prohibited to have any pets, but he keeps hearing some barking on the 3rd floor. There are 3 apartments there, so he decides to pay a visit to everyone who lives on that floor. Mr. Walker, Ms. Clark, and Mr. Allen. Can you tell who keeps a dog? It's Mr. Allen. Take a look at the shoe rack. Some of his shoes are chewed. 4 friends were going to another city by car, but at some point, something distracted the driver, and they got in a car crash. A police officer arrived and started the investigation. He asked who had been driving, but no one took the blame. Then, the officer inspected the car. Can you tell who the driver was? The driver was the red-haired girl. There's a sweater on the driver's seat. She's the only one not wearing a jacket or sweater, so it must be hers. Mrs. Miller was waiting for a delivery, but she never got it. And since the woman had to go to work, she asked her husband to drive to the post office and ask about her package. When Mrs. Miller came back home, Mr. Miller said he'd just returned from the post office, but they said the package hadn't arrived yet. Mrs. Miller didn't believe him and claimed he hadn't driven anywhere. How did she understand it? Take a look at the car. It's all covered in snow. To go to the post office, Mr. Miller would have to clean it first. In a parallel universe, you're only allowed to have fun and eat candy. No one ever reads or studies. Mrs. Relham came back home after a long and entertaining day at the club. Her 3 daughters were supposed to have a lot of fun on their own. She asked them what they had been doing. Hannah said she'd been watching TV all day long. Ellie answered she'd spent the day at a water park. Ava told her mom she and her friends had a candy-eating contest. Still, Mrs. Relham could tell one of her daughters was lying. That daughter spent all day studying. Who was it? It was Hannah. Take a closer look at her hands. There are some ink stains. If she had actually watched TV, she wouldn't have needed a pen. In June, students of the Faculty of Economics had their econometrics exam. It was the hardest one in that semester, and everyone was worried. On the day of the exam, the students entered the classroom. Everyone was assigned to a specific seat. A professor was sure one of the students was going to cheat, so he made that person sit right in front of him. Which student was it, and how did the professor know? It's the guy with dark hair. It's June, and all the students are lightly dressed. Still, this student is wearing a sweater with long sleeves. He must be up to something. Now take a look at these 3 students, Savannah, Melody, and Scarlett. One of them managed to cheat at the exam, and no one noticed it. Can you tell who it was and how she managed to use her notes? It was Scarlett. She's wearing long boots. That's where she kept her notes. Michelle was having a house party. She noticed that her brother had disappeared and went upstairs to find him. When she neared his room, she heard laughter. Her brother was in there with some girl. But Michelle couldn't figure out who it was. She got very curious, so after they left, she sneaked into his room to look for some hints. She suspected 3 girls, Lily, Sydney, and Nicole. Michelle immediately guessed who her brother was dating. Who was it? Her brother is dating Nicole. There's an earring on the couch, and Nicole is wearing only one earring, which looks exactly the same. She must have lost it. Can you tell which student in the classroom isn't a real person? The guy in the middle doesn't cast a shadow. There's definitely something fishy about him. Michael had a crush on Ellie, the girl he studied with. One day, he decided to write her a note, asking her out. Unfortunately, he didn't remember which desk was Ellie's. Can you tell which one Michael needs? Take a look at Ellie's photo. She's waving her left hand, which means she's likely left-handed. There's only one desk where the pen is to the left of the copybook. It must be Ellie's desk. A grocery store manager found out that someone had been stealing bananas from the store all the time. The man conducted his own investigation and got 3 suspects. But he couldn't accuse the customers until he was 100% sure. Take a look at these people and say who the banana thief is. Look at the guy wearing a top hat. It's a perfect place for hiding and stealing stuff. He must be the thief. Brandon and Genevieve are on their working trip to London. They decided to meet in a cafe in the evening. Now, they're both driving there. Can you tell which of them isn't smart? Brandon. In England, people drive on the left side of the road, and he's driving on the right. Early in the morning, a big sum of money went missing from the accountant's safe in the office. Only 3 people were at work at that time. Haley, the accountant, said she'd left for a couple of minutes to go to the bathroom. Eric, the software manager, claimed he'd had his lunch break and hadn't seen anything. Joseph, the cleaning man, said he'd been cleaning the 2nd floor at the time. Can you figure out who's lying? It's Eric. He couldn't have a lunch break. It was still early in the morning. Someone had been stealing food from a grocery store. The manager couldn't find out who it was and hired a detective. Look at the security camera footage for the last year and say who the thief is. It's the dark-haired pregnant lady. It's been a year and she's still pregnant. Plus, the size of her belly has never changed. It must be fake. Theo was spending the day with her boyfriend Derek. After lunch, he said he had some urgent business to deal with and left her for a couple of hours. When Derek came back, Theo realized he'd been cheating on her and broke up with him. How did she find out? Take a closer look at Derek's neck. There's a lipstick stain. It's red, while Theo is wearing pink lipstick, which means it's not hers. Mr. Roberts, one of the best surgeons in the country, came to his insurance company. The man said he'd been robbed right in the street. The assistant asked if Mr. Roberts remembered any specific details about the criminal. He said he didn't. Everything happened too fast, and he had very bad eyesight. The assistant refused to start the investigation. He said Mr. Roberts was lying. He wasn't actually robbed. Why didn't the man believe Mr. Roberts? Mr. Roberts is a surgeon, but it's not possible to work as one if you have poor eyesight. It means Mr. Roberts lied. In a small town, someone stole all the chicken nuggets from a local store. The owner called the police, and they started the investigation. There were 3 suspects who were in the store at around that time. Mrs. Wilson said her family was vegetarian. She wouldn't be interested in chicken nuggets. Mr. Martin said he'd needed to return home very fast. He had to take a conference call. He didn't have any time to waste. Mr. Thomas simply stated that he hadn't stolen anything. Can you tell who the thief is? The thief is Mrs. Wilson. She said her family was vegetarian, but behind her back, there's a freshly cooked chicken on the table. Esme was having a walk in the forest. After it started to get dark, the girl tried to find her way back home, but got lost. Finally, she came across a witch's house and asked the woman to help her find her way home. The witch only agreed to do so on one condition. She gave Esme a piece of string and said,
"Put it anywhere. If I can step over it, I'll keep you with me forever. If I don't manage to do it, I'll show you the way home."
What can Esme do? Esme should put the string right next to the wall. This way, the witch won't be able to step over it. Take a close look at the picture and figure out who the thief is. Look at this guy. His right hand is inside the woman's bag.